Welcome, everyone. This is Brother Doug with the Awakened by Yahuwah group. I am joined today with my sister Shoshana, my brother Dennis, my sister Sally, and my sister Sadie. And also joining us today, we also have Sister Kristen. And I just want to welcome you guys, whoever's new to watching our studies. We are believers in Yahuwah and Yahusha, the Almighty and His Son, the Messiah. So we go through Scripture, and we actually started way back last year from Genesis, made it up to here now in the book of Isaiah. So we are going to be reading chapter 4.
Help me! Help! Help! Help!
I don't know what happened there. But we're going to be starting the chapter of Yashayahu, the chapter 49 of the book of Isaiah, Yashayahu. So I will start us off, and here we go. Listen to me, O coastlands, and hear, you peoples from afar. Yahuwah has called me from the womb. From my mother's belly he has caused my name to be remembered. And he made my mouth like a sharp sword. In the shadow of his hand he hid me and made me a polished shaft. In his quiver he hid me. And he said to me, you are my servant, O Yashra'al, in whom I am adorned. Let me just, hold on. And I said, I have labored in vain. I have spent my strength for emptiness and in vain. But my right ruling is with Yahuwah, and my work with my Elohim. And now, said Yahuwah, who formed me from the womb to be his servant, to bring Yaakov, Jacob, back to him. Though Yashra'al is not gathered to him, yet I am esteemed in the eyes of Yahuwah, and my Elohim has been my strength. And he says, shall it be a small matter for you to be my servant, to raise up the tribes of Yaakov, Jacob, and to bring back the preserved ones of Yashra'al? And I shall give you as a light to the nations, to be my salvation to the ends of the earth. Thus said Yahuwah, the Redeemer of Yashra'al, their set apart one, to the despised, to the loathed one of the nation, to the servant of rulers. Kings shall see and arise, rulers also shall bow themselves, because of Yahuwah who is steadfast, the set apart one of Yashra'al, and he has chosen you. Thus said Yahuwah, in a favorable time I shall answer you, and in the day of salvation I shall help you. And I guard you and give you for a covenant of the people, to restore the earth, to cause them to inherit the ruined inheritances, to say to the prisoners, go out, to those who are in darkness, show yourselves. Let them feed on the ways, and let their pasture be on all bare hills. They shall not hunger nor thirst, neither heat or sun strike them, for he who has compassion on them shall lead them, even by the fountains of water guide them. And I shall make all my mountains a way, and my highways raised up. See, these come from far away, and see those from north and the west, and these from the land of Sinim. Sing, O heavens, rejoice, O earth, and break out in singing, O mountains, for Yahuwah shall comfort his people and have compassion on his afflicted ones. But Sion says, Yahuwah has forsaken me, and Yahuwah has forgotten me. Would a woman forget her nursing child and not have compassion on the son of her womb? Though they forget, I never forget you. See, I have inscribed you on the palms of my hands. Your walls are always before me. Your sons shall hurry, your destroyers and those who laid you waste depart from you. Lift up your eyes round about and see all of them gathered together and come to you as I live, declares Yahuwah. You shall put on all of them as an ornament and bind them on you as a bride does. For your wastes and your deserted places in the land of your destruction shall soon be too narrow for the inhabitants, while those who swallowed you up are far away. The sons of your bereavement shall yet say in your ears, the place is too narrow for me, make room for me to live. And you shall say in your heart, who has brought forth these for me, since I am bereaved and barren and exiled and wandering to and fro, and who reared them? See, I was left alone. From where did these come? Thus said the Master Yahuwah, see, I lift my hand up to the nations and set up my banner for the peoples, and they shall bring your sons in their arms and your daughters carried on their shoulders. And kings shall be your foster fathers, and their sovereignesses, their queens, your nursing mothers. They bow down to you with their faces to the earth and lick up the dust of your feet. And you shall know that I am Yahuwah, those who wait for me and shall not be ashamed. Is prey taken from the mighty, and the captives of the righteous saved? Yet thus said Yahuwah, even the captives of the mighty are taken away, and the prey of the ruthless is saved. And I strive with him who strives with you, and I save your children. I shall feed those who oppress you, and with their own flesh, and let them drink their own blood as sweet wine. All flesh shall know that I, Yahuwah, am your Savior and your Redeemer, the mighty one of Yaakov, Jacob. And that is the end of chapter 49. And so let me unmute if anyone wants to make comments. All right. So I guess we should address the elephant that's in the room, that most Jews will interpret this as this is talking about Jacob, and this has nothing to do with Yahusha, and they'll say, see, he's calling his servant that brings salvation Jacob. And I think they miss the spiritual part of this, is that it's talking about Yahusha, because he's the one that Yahuwah chooses to bring salvation to the nations, and he's the promised Messiah. So I think that's where the interpretation gets rough. If most people try to say that Jacob is the anointed one of Yahuwah, and that this chapter is only talking about Jacob and it's not talking about Yahusha. That's what the Jews claim. But I see Yahusha all over this chapter.
I do too.
Oh, I do too. In the New King James, this chapter is labeled the Messiah's mission, and so I didn't see that it was about Jacob at all.
They take the one verse in the beginning of the chapter that says, Yahuwah called me from my belly, and then it starts off by saying, it says, called me from my womb, from my mother's belly. He has caused my name to be remembered. He made my mouth like a sharp sword. In the shadow of his hand he hid me and made me a polished shaft. In his quiver he hid me. He said to, and verse 3 says, and he said to me, you are my servant, O Yashra'al. So they stop there, and they want to label that this whole chapter is about Jacob. And they want to say that, because, they obviously would go back to Genesis where Jacob's called Yashra'al, but they don't realize too that Yashra'al can refer to all 12 tribes. And the fact that he might have been talking about Jacob in that verse, but the rest of this chapter he's talking about Yahusha. He's talking about the sword that's in his quiver, And we know that, Yahusha is the word of Yahuwah, and it says in Hebrews 4:12, even, it says the word of Yahuwah is a double-edged sword. So I think once you understand that, it makes sense why he's using metaphors like, I am the sword that's in your quiver, and all of that. And he even says in my version, in verse 2, he says, and he made my mouth like a sharp sword. So again, the connection between the word of Yahuwah being Yahusha in Revelations, I believe it's Revelation 19, if I'm not mistaken, and the fact that his name is the word of Yahuwah, it says in Revelations, and the fact that his mouth is a sharp sword. So and
I think it's talking about a lot of Yaakov. It's talking about the children of Israel.
Exactly. Yes.
It's not talking about Yaakov the person per se, but all of us that are going to be around at the end of the age, because it's talking to the children of Yisrael at the end of the age, because that's when deliverance happens. And when he said at the end, all flesh shall know that I, Yahweh, am your Savior and your Redeemer, the Elohim of Yaakov. So it's rather than being about Yaakov person, it's about the Elohim of Yaakov and the descendants of Yaakov at the end of the age. That's how I see it.
That's a good way to look at it.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because it's talking about the I think it says remnant in most versions for verse 6. I don't know if yours says remnant or not, but from what it sounds like, it's talking about the remnant of Yashrael. It says in verse 6, and he says, shall it be a small matter for you to be my servant to raise up the tribes of Jacob, of Yaakov, and to bring back the preserved ones, or probably it says remnant in like the KJV, of Yashrael, and I shall give you as a light to the nations, to be my salvation to the ends of the earth. So again, I think that part is definitely talking about Yahusha, my salvation to the ends of the earth, and giving him as a light, just connecting that with I am the light of the world. So I mean, you can connect that to the New Testament and see that it's obviously talking about Yahusha when he says, I've given you a light to the nations. So, and but the other part of this verse also talks about the 12 tribes, as Shoshana was alluding to, and it's talking about the 12 tribes of Jacob. So yeah, I agree with that interpretation that Shoshana has.
Yes. Yes, I agree with it too.
And this is also showing evidence of, in the Tanakh, which, we're taught, raised in the church, and that Yahuwah, he was all wrath and never had mercy. Like, the old Christian doctrine of the deity of the Old Testament versus the deity of the New Testament, and the Father is all wrath, no mercy. Well, you see here in this chapter, like right at the end, it's saying that, let's see, it says, thus says Yahuwah in verse, I think it starts in verse 8, in a favorable time I shall answer you, and in the day of salvation I shall help you, and I guard you, and give you for a covenant of the people, to restore the earth, to cause them to inherit the ruined inheritances, to say to the prisoners, go out to those who are in darkness, show yourselves, let them feed on the ways, and let their pasture be on all bare hills. They shall not hunger nor thirst, neither heat or sun strike them, for he has compassion on them shall lead them, even by fountains of water guide them, and I shall make all my mountains a way and my highways raised up. See, these come from far away, and see those from the north and the west, and these from the land of Sinim. So it's obviously Yahuwah is showing compassion on Yashrael, and he's showing mercy for us to come back to him when really we don't deserve it. So obviously there is evidence in the Tanakh for favor and mercy.
Yes, and where it says in verse 8 that I guard you and give you for a covenant of the people, I believe he's talking about the Kadosh one that he speaks about in verse 7, and that being Yahusha.
Yeah, he's the what is it called? He's basically the author of the renewed covenant. He's basically the one that makes it, because even at the Last Supper, which is the Passover meal, and it's very important for people to understand that what Christianity takes as the Last Supper is actually the Passover that him and his disciples were eating together before he was taken to be impaled. So he's actually saying to them, this, my blood, is shed for the renewed covenant. So he's actually the one that establishes the renewed covenant with his disciples and says, you drink of my blood, you eat of my body, you are basically partaking of the renewed covenant. And obviously that's not literal. For anyone that's that's new to that type of saying, he was obviously metaphorical. You can find in the accounts of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John that he even explains to his disciples when he says, you will have no part with me unless you drink my blood and eat my body. He's talking metaphorical and spiritual. He's not saying literally to eat his body like they teach in the Catholic Church. So I guess, does anyone else have any comments or anything on this chapter?
I think that's awesome. You did really well. I like the way he says he created us and how precious it is for a mother that breastfeeds and how she does not leave her baby. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think there's another verse in Jeremiah or somewhere where he actually says, even if a mother left her child, I would not leave you. Like, he even goes above and beyond to say, even if a mother did that to her child, I would not do that to you. So
that's right. And he clears that up real quick. And I like the way Shoshana said it when that verse is that verse is Yahushua HaMashiach that they're talking about. There's a lot of stuff in the, how would I say, the Old Covenant. So we all know New Covenant, Old Covenant, New Testament, Old Testament. But it does point to Yahushua being around. He's always been around. He's been there since the very beginning, but we've never looked at it. I mean, in eyes that he was only here when he was born here, when he came from Mary's womb, But that's not true. He has always been and always will be, and has been from the very beginning.
Yeah, he's and the reason we don't see him really growing up in the that type of the whole Cirque community is because they totally ignore where he's obviously in the Tanakh as appearing as a Malach, actually. sometimes. He's actually known as the Malak of Yahuwah, where it says like the Malak of Yahuwah. A lot of the times that's referring to him, appearing, being a messenger of the Father, and he's saying, he was the one in the burning bush. He was the one, that pretty much spoke to Yashraal when they were, in the wilderness, when they were at Mount Sinai. That's why they because even Scripture even tells us that no one has ever seen the Father, and so I believe
and
that.
then, you know what? How about you forgot a really important one, which was Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who was with him in the fire.
Oh yeah, it actually says, Nebuchadnezzar even noticed it. He's like, oh, that looks like one of the Malak of Yahuwah. And so Nebuchadnezzar, who wasn't even an Israelite, even understood. He was like, whoa. He's like, who's that fourth person? And so, there's so many instances, in Deuteronomy where he says, I send my Malak before you. Do not disobey him. He will not pardon your transgression. And Yahuwah actually verbatimly says, my name is in him.
That's an Exodus. Doug.
Oh, Exodus. Okay. Yeah, I think the Septuagint actually says my name is on him. So,
Exodus 23 verses 20 and 21.
So
Yeah.
Exodus 23:21.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let me see here. I actually want to see how the Septuagint reads it, because I remember reading it from the Septuagint and it kind of jumped out at me. It said, verse 20 and 21, behold, I send an Malak before you to keep you in the way and to bring you in the place which I have prepared. Beware of him and obey his voice. Provoke him not, for he will not pardon your transgressions, for my name is in him. So that's how the Septuagint reads. And it's kind of interesting that it says, he will bring you to the place that I've prepared for you. It kind of parallels what Yahushua says in the accounts of Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and John. I will come back to you. Don't you know I have a place prepared for you? And so I don't know, that kind of gave me like a weird correlation to the Brit Hadashah, how Yahushua says to his disciples, I will come back to you because I will prepare a place for you. Or my Father has a place prepared for you. So it's very interesting that you connect those two, and you'll see that it is Yahushua that Yahuwah is referring to.
You read from 20? Did you read it from the 20? Verse 20? Yeah.
23:20 says, behold, I send a Malak, or the English in most translations say angel, before
Yes.
you, and to keep you in the way and bring you in the place which I have prepared. So the verse 20 was the one I was referring to, how in the New Testament, Brit Hadashah, Yahushua almost says the very same exact thing, that he's going to come back and get us and bring us to the place that is prepared for us by the Father.
He's been doing this and saying this since the beginning, and it's like, this is where I guess it becomes blinded to the Jewish community. They don't want to see these kind of things, right? Because this goes with all of the New Testament, because he's always telling us to be in him, then he will keep us if we're in him. So here he's saying, I will go before you. Who goes before you? So Yahushua is always going before us. He's always there. We're never alone. And it goes back with what you read earlier, that maybe it's nice to see the breastfeeding mother, but if she left him, he would never leave us. So we're never fatherless nor motherless, ever.
And is the scripture that you had mentioned, Doug, it's actually what we just read. It's
Yep.
49, verse 15. Would a woman forget her nursing child and not have compassion on the son of her womb? Though they do forget, I never forget you. So there it is.
Awesome. I'm gonna mute. Awesome.
All right. Yeah. So, yeah, that was just a cool correlation I wanted to bring up, and I always love when I see verses like this in verse 13 of this chapter. It talks about, "O heavens, rejoice, O earth," and it's talking about telling them to sing. So I always found that interesting. So anyway, I think we can continue and go to the next chapter. I really don't see anything else I wanted to talk about. I think everything else is self-explanatory. Oh, other than it says the day of deliverance, the day of salvation. Kind of want to touch a tiny bit on that and how that correlates with the Brit Hadashah, where Yahusha says, that he who endures to the end shall be saved. So Yahuwah is prophesying in Yashayahu about the day of salvation. And so I just found that pretty interesting. And let me see if I can find the exact verse that says it.
And then I have something afterwards.
Yep. Which one of the nations? See, it says, "I shall give you as a light to do my salvation to the ends of the earth." Let me see. I thought there was a day of salvation on here. Maybe I misread it. But oh, here we go. Verse 8. "Thus says Yahuwah in a favorable time." So we can link that up with Zechariah 12:10, because Yahuwah says, "I will put a spirit of favor and mercy on the house of David." So it says, "Thus said Yahuwah in a favorable time, I shall answer you, and in the day of salvation or deliverance I shall help you and guard you and give you for a covenant of the people to restore the earth." So this is definitely talking about a specific time. This is the restoration of all things, like how we're taught, the day that basically this kind of alludes to the new heaven and new earth, to cause them to inherit it, the ruined inheritances. So basically Yahuwah is saying that he's giving Yahusha for the day for salvation to the nations, and on the day of salvation he will be the one that restores, meaning Yahusha will be the one that restores the earth and basically gives the inheritances to us. But I think these inheritances sound like they're going to be restored also, since the earth will be restored. So even though there's ruined inheritances right now, they will be restored when they're given to us. So, I think that was it, though. I pretty much didn't have much else I wanted to add. So I think whoever wants to read next, go ahead.
I will. I'll read it. I'll read next. Thus says Yahuwah, where is the certificate of your mother's divorce, whom I have put away? Or which of my creditors is it to whom I have sold you? Look, you were sold for your crookednesses, and your mother was put away for your transgressions. When I came, why was there no one? When I called, why was there no one to answer? Was my hand too short to redeem, or have I no power to deliver? See, by my rebuke I dry up the sea. I make the rivers a wilderness. Their fish stink, for there is not water, and die of thirst. I clothe the heavens with darkness, and I make sackcloth their covering. The Master Yahuwah has given me the tongue of taught ones, that I should know to help the weary with a word. He wakes me morning by morning. He wakes my ear to hear his taught ones. The Master Yahuwah has opened my ear, and I was not rebellious, nor did I turn away. I gave my back to those who struck me, and my cheeks to those who plucked out the beard. I did not hide my face from humiliation and spitting, and the Master Yahuwah helps me. Therefore I shall not be humiliated. So I have set my face like a flint, and I know that I am not put to shame. Near is he who declares me right. Who would contend with me? Let us stand together. Who is my adversary? Let him come near me. See, the Master Yahuwah helps me. Who would declare me wrong? See, all of them wear out like a garment. A moth eats them. Who among you is fearing Yahuwah, obeying the voice of his servant, that has walked in darkness and has no light? Let him trust in the name of Yahuwah and lean upon his Elohim. See, all you who light a fire, girding on burning arrows, walk in the light of your fire, and in the burning arrows you have lit. From my hand you shall have this, you shall lie down in grief. Do you want me to keep going?
That's you just read the end of 50, right?
I just read the whole chapter of 50.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely want to stop here because verse 6 was like green light, green light. If any Jews are listening or any Muslims possibly came by our channel, you're in for a treat with verse 6. This is verbatimly talking about Yahusha. If you have ever even came by the New Testament, oh no, did Sadie just miss? Hello?
Yes, I did, because I got disconnected.
No. All right, so we just read chapter 50. It was a pretty short chapter. It was only 10 verses. Pretty much, I was just bringing up the fact that if you look in verse 6, it's really talking about Yahusha being mocked, being spit upon. Anyone that doubts that Yahusha, the Messiah, should read Isaiah 50, verse 6. I gave my back to those who struck me, and my cheeks to those who plucked out the beard. I did not hide my face from humiliation and spitting. Now, you read the Brit Hadashah, the New Testament, you see Isaiah 56, and you match it up with any of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and it will verbatimly talk about that. So that, to me, that jumped out as this is definitely talking about Yahusha as it continues on from the last chapter. So I think any doubters read that, they can't ignore that.
No, and I really wanted to, that it could only be Yahusha, because who else was struck time after time in the back, and his cheeks were plucked, his beard was plucked out. I noticed that when I saw the shroud of Turin, that the beard had been plucked out of this man's face, and that could only have been Yahusha. I do believe it's him, but no one should worship it for sure as an idol. But
No.
it's something that he left behind so that people would know that he was raised, because the image on the shroud was like a photograph. It was burned in, yes.
Well, where did you see that? Online? Is it online? Or?
It was in Time magazine years ago, and I noticed it very definitely that the beard had been plucked.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, I don't doubt it for a...
It's not like they pulled his whole beard out. It's like he just had gaps here, 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 whatever.
Sure. that was probably not too difficult compared to some of the other of what he went through on that
Well, I mean,
fiction.
it talks about it right here about how they struck his back and they plucked
Yes.
his beard
Oh, I
and
know.
his face.
Yes.
He said, I did not hide my face and spitting.
I'm sure it was hideous what they did to him.
Yeah, this is not the only place in the Tanakh that it refers to him verbatim. Psalms, you can go all over the book of Psalms. That's a study on its own to see all the messianic prophecies. Like, they gave me gall to drink. And, talking about him biting on that thing that was full of vinegar. That literally King David's saying that, but it's prophetic, talking about Yahusha being the one that it actually happened to. And a lot of King David stuff, like what really jumped out to me from Isaiah 50 was it says, I will not be put to shame. And if you know what it says in the book of Psalms referring to the cornerstone, it says that whoever hopes in him will not be put to shame, referring to the Son. And so it's very interesting that here it seems like he's talking to the Father, but it seems like in Psalms it's talking about Yahusha coming, that whoever trusts in him, whoever trusts in that cornerstone, that firm foundation will not be put to shame. And let me see if I can find that verse in Psalms. And actually, Paul quotes from Psalms in Romans 10:11 and says this. Romans chapter 10, verse 11 says, let me go to there real quick. Because the scripture says, whoever puts his trust in him shall not be put to shame. And they are getting that from actually the book of Isaiah. I was wrong. It's actually the book of Isaiah. Chapter 28, verse 16. Therefore, thus says the Master Yahuwah, see, I am laying down in Sion a stone for a foundation, a tried stone, a precious cornerstone, a firm foundation. He who trusts shall not, and I think in the King James it says shall not be put to shame, or I forget which one says shall not be put to shame. I'm trying to think which translation it is, because they all say hasten away, but I think I'm trying to think of one. Oh, look at this. Septuagint never lets me down. Therefore, thus says Yahuwah, even Yahuwah, behold, I lay for the foundations of Sion a costly stone, a choice, a cornerstone, a precious stone for its foundations. And he that believes on him shall by no means be ashamed. So the Septuagint actually gives it word for word. So that's another evidence of Paul using the Septuagint, because he's saying in Romans 10:11 the same exact thing. So that was a correlation between Isaiah 28:16 of the Septuagint LXX Old Testament and Romans chapter 10 verse 11. I'm about to write that down because that's
Septuagint from the Dead Sea Scrolls?
no. Septuagint precedes the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Is that right? Wow.
Yeah, Septuagint, Mom, is the only Old Testament that the disciples probably had around their time. Because realistically, that was the closest they had to the original Hebrew canon. That was the the original Torah and prophet. That was the closest they had to the original first 5 books of Moses and the prophets. There was no, the Old Testament that's in our Bibles right now was not even created back in the time of the disciples. So you're talking about a space of 1,000 years. So yeah. And I'm glad my mom asked that, because now that's on the recording. So anyway, so I just wanted to jot that down real quick. So that's Isaiah 28:16 of the Septuagint, matching up with Romans chapter 10 verse 11 that Paul quotes from. So that's good. All right. So I think other than that, I don't know if there's anything else from this chapter other than the divorce. Talking about the divorce between Yahuwah and Yashrael in verse 1. And so this is kind of like a backdrop, like kind of like, what is that word, that the modernized word that we call it, deja vu almost, because it's like he's going back to Yirmiyahu in chapter 3, where he says, I have given, Yashrael a certificate of divorce. So again, he's bringing that back up to who, I'm guessing he's saying that to Yashayahu. He's saying, thus says Yahuwah, where is the certificate of your mother's divorce, whom I have put away, ? Or which of my creditors is it to whom I have sold you? Look, you were sold for your crookedness, and your mother was put away for your transgression. So Yahuwah is basically saying, not just to Yashayahu, but to all 12 tribes, like, this is the reason I put you away. And you can even match that up with Yahusha in the Brit Hadashah, where he talks about, you can only put a woman away write her a certificate of divorce or put her away if she commits fornication, if she commits adultery. And so this is kind of like, that's the reason Yahuwah did it to Yashrael. And, as you read through the Tanakh, you'll see that's the exact reason. They did spiritual adultery. They worshipped idols and so on and so forth. And Yahuwah, even in certain prophetic books, will say, you, in metaphoric, sense, he says, you've laid your skirt for many lovers, talking about idolatry. And so this is the main reason he divorced them, was basically idolatry, and that was the number one. So I just kind of wanted to touch on that.
Could a woman put a man away for adultery?
It doesn't condone it, and it doesn't say you can, so it's kind of like a gray area. It's like, I don't know. It's the law doesn't really condemn it, though. I will say that. It doesn't say you can't. So I don't know where I would lean on, because I don't know if some things are reserved for the man only, or like, I don't know how that goes with Yahuwah, because he doesn't really tell us that it's only a man that can divorce, but he does tell us the grounds for divorce. At least he does tell us that there has to be adultery involved. You can't just willy-nilly say, oh, well, I don't like this person anymore, I'm going to divorce him. Like, that to me, that's definitely a sin. That's just
happening all around us in this world. It's just all around us. They divorce for no reason at all.
And I think it was important that we touched on that in this chapter, and I think Yahuwah actually led me to that, because he touched on it very quickly in this chapter, but I think it was important for us to address that and why he's referencing that to Yashayahu, and even the importance of it to match with the Brit Hadashah, that why Yahusha says that, because obviously the father's not going to break his own law. He's not going to divorce for any reason that wouldn't be adultery. So
my daughter-in-law put my son away for no reason other than she just wanted to leave. and she took my 3 grandchildren with her. And that was just totally, I don't know, I probably shouldn't have brought it up, but it's not lawful what she did.
I mean, in a way, it's good to bring something up like that generally, because that kind of reminds people you can't just, give up and get divorced for no reason at all. Like that's not, and Yahusha actually said to the Pharisees, he went on to say, after he talked about adultery being the only grounds for it, he said the only reason Masha gave it to your fathers was because of their hardened hearts.
Mm-hmm.
He even goes on to say it was not so from the beginning of the world. That was not Yahuwah's will.
Right.
So he actually rebukes them because they're like trying to trick him and trying to say, oh, yada, 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 can you divorce? Is it willful to divorce? And they're trying to like trip him up. So he rebukes them and says, well, it really wasn't Yahuwah's intention for you to ever get divorced. Well, because your fathers had a hardened heart. And then it goes on, obviously, it goes on into another topic in that chapter that, they try to trip him up again and ask him, oh, whose wife is she going to be in the resurrection? And he's like, are you guys, like, I feel like, to paraphrase, is like, are you guys dumb or something? Like, you guys not realize you don't give into marriage? Like, after you're resurrected, like, there's no marriage in the kingdom. There's no, so-and-so's wife, we're going to be like the Malachim. He even says it. Says it in the resurrection, you will be like the Malachim. You will not be given into marriage. So that's, so I just found that kind of funny, remembering, how he rebuked them and how he just thought it was silly for them to ask him that question. Like, if she marries this brother and the brother dies and then marries the other brother and yada, 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 and they're trying to ask him whose wife is she in the resurrection.
Mm-hmm.
So I think other than that, though, I think that's pretty much it I got from here. I kind of like verse 9, how it says, trust in the name of Yahuwah and lean upon his Elohim. It says, let him trust in the name of Yahuwah and lean upon his Elohim. I like that.
Where is that?
That's verse 10, I think.
Okay, stop looking at verse 9.
Oh, my bad. Who among you is fearing Yahuwah, obeying the voice of his servant? So again, he kind of references back to Exodus 23:20. Says, who is obeying the voice of his servant? And so I find that extremely interesting. It says, who among you is fearing Yahuwah, obeying the voice of his servant that has walked in darkness and has no light? Let him trust in the name of Yahuwah and lean upon his Elohim. So basically, Yashayahu is rebuking, Yashrael for basically not fearing Yahuwah, walking in darkness, and not obeying the voice of his servant. And it's actually saying at the end, let him trust in the name of Yahuwah and lean upon his Elohim. So again, it's showing the importance of Yahuwah's name.
I wonder if the voice of his servant might be referring to Yahushua.
Definitely. If it's the same context as Exodus 23:20, I would think.
Yeah.
I think that's who he's referring to. And obviously, because he's talking to Yashrael, it can't be anyone else, because Yashrael is the one being rebuked right now, and the only other servant he's referring to is Yahusha. And the only person it really refers to when it says the voice of my servant usually refers to the Messiah, because even though he does say that when Moses is alive, but prophetically it's definitely talking about Yahusha. It only refers to Moses really when Moses was actually the one, taking Yahuwah's words and bringing them to Yashraal, and when he was like the mediator type of deal in the Exodus, and until he died. But I think context-wise, it's obviously talking about Yahusha.
I'm kind of confused about verse 11 because it talks about people who light a fire and put on burning arrows. And it says they walk in the light of their own fire, and then burning arrows you lit. From my hand you shall have this, you shall lie down in grief. He's punishing people who light a fire and walk in, I guess walk in the light of your own fire.
Yeah. Or metaphorically, we could even use that meaning that people that walk in their own light.
Yeah.
That refuse to walk in his light, but I can spiritualize that verse and say this could kind of mean like we walk in what we think is right, not what he thinks is right. And maybe he's trying to rebuke them and trying to say, you walk in what you think is right, but you need to walk in my light, not your light. And that's possibly what he's saying there. Also, I was thinking in verse 11, it almost sounded like it's talking about war too, like burning arrows. I mean, if we took it literally, it's kind of sounding like they're making war, girding on burning arrows, walking in the light of your fire, and in the burning arrows you have lit. So it's almost like a substitution of not trusting in Yahuwah, but trusting in our own works instead of trusting in him. And that, like, basically having no trust and no belief in him and wanting to do it by ourselves.
Yeah, that's what it came across as to me. And
which pretty much every false religion has that, false works message. You can get there by yourself. You don't need to repent. You don't need a savior. You can achieve deityhood on your own. Gnosticism, Freemasonry, Kabbalah, certain sects of even the Catholic Church believe that. They believe that, you're to accept the Messiah, that he died for you, but after that, it's based on your works, and it's based on doing good deeds. So that type of mentality's pretty much been all over this planet, this plane that we live on. I don't even like to say the word planet, but this plane, this ground we've been living on, that type of spirit of works salvation has been running rampant for a long, long time.
anyway, all false beliefs fall in that category.
I think we have Sadie back on here, if I'm not mistaken, or either this unknown number here. I'm pretty sure it's Sadie.
That's Sadie.
Okay. All right, so I think we can start the next chapter. Let's see, who hasn't read yet?
My voice is like a frog. I'll try.
Yeah, mine's not too perfect either.
Listen to me, you who pursue righteousness, seeking Yahweh. Look to the rock who you were hewn from, and to the hole of the pit you were dug from. Look to Abraham, your father, and to Sarah, who bore you. For he was alone when I called him, and I baraked him and increased him. For Yahweh shall comfort Zion. He shall comfort all her waste places. For he makes her wilderness like Eden, or Adon, and her desert like the garden of Yahweh. Joy and gladness are found in it, thanksgiving and the voice of song. Listen to me, my people, and give ear to me, O my nation, for the Torah goes forth from me, and my right ruling I place as a light to peoples. My righteousness is near, my deliverance shall go forth, and my arms judge peoples. Coastlands wait upon me, and for my arm they wait expectantly. Lift up your eyes to the Shemayim, and look on the earth beneath. For the Shemayim shall vanish like smoke, and the earth wear out like a garment, and those who dwell in it die as gnats. But my deliverance is forever, and my righteousness is not broken. Listen to me, you who know righteousness, a people in whose heart is my Torah. Do not fear the reproach of men, nor be afraid of their revilings. For a moth eats them like a garment, and a worm eats them like wool. But my righteousness is forever, and my deliverance to all generations. Awake, awake, put on strength, O arm of Yahuwah. Awake, as in the days of old, everlasting generations. Was it not you who cut pride apart and pierced the dragon? Was it not you who dried up the sea, the waters of the great deep, who made the depths of the sea a way for the redeemed to pass over, and let the ransomed of Yahuwah return? And they shall come to Zion with singing, with everlasting joy on their heads. Let them attain joy and gladness. Sorrow and sighing shall flee away. I am he who comforts you. Who are you that you should be afraid of men, man that dies, and of the Son of Man who is made like grass? And you have forgotten Yahuwah, your Maker, who stretched out the Shemayim and laid the foundations of the earth, and you continually fear all the day because of the rage of the oppressor, as he has prepared to destroy. And where is the rage of the oppressor? Bowed, he hastens to be loosened, that he should not die in the pit, and that his bread should not fail. But I am Yahuwah, your Elohim, stirring up the sea, and its waves roar. Yahuwah of hosts is his name. And I have put my words in your mouth, and with the shadow of my hand I have covered you, to plant the Shemayim and to lay the foundations of the Eretz, and to say to Zion, you are my people. Awake, awake yourself. Rise up, O Yerushalayim, you who have drunk at the hand of Yahuwah the cup of his wrath. You have drunk the dregs of the cup of reeling and drained it out. Of all the sons she bore, she had none to guide her. And of all the sons she has brought up, no one strengthens her hand. Both these are coming upon you. Who is sorry for you? Ruin and destruction, scarcity of food and sword. How shall I comfort you? Your sons have fainted. They lie at the head of all the streets, like a gazelle in a net. They are filled with the wrath of Yahuwah, the rebuke of your Elohim. Therefore, please hear this, you afflicted and drunk, but not with wine. Thus said your Adon, your master, Yahuwah, and your Elohim, who pleads the cause of his people. See, I shall take out of your hand the cup of reeling, the dregs of the cup of my wrath. Never again shall you drink it. And I shall put it into the hand of those who afflict you, who have said to your being, bow down, and we pass over you, and you make your back like the ground, and as the street to walk over. That sounds just like the wicked who are alive today. And they listen to the voice of Hashatan and actually think he will save them. They listen to a lie and believe it. Doug, you're muted.
Yep, I was just making sure that I kind of lost track where you were because I was just testing verse 9 when you were reading. I was trying to keep up with you, but I wanted to make sure that the chapter is done before I unmuted myself. Okay, so verse 9, very interesting, the way it's put in the Restored Name King James. It actually says, talking about the arm of Yahuwah, and I'm going to give my little hypothesis who I think this is talking about. And it says, awake, awake, put on strength, O arm of Yahuwah, awake as in the ancient days, in the generations of old. Are you not it that has cut Rahab and wounded the dragon? Question mark. Are you not it that which had dried the sea, the waters of the great deep, that has made the depths of the sea a way for the ransomed to pass over? To me, that's very clear who this is talking about. This is definitely Yahusha being referenced as the arm of Yahuwah Almighty. And it actually says that he cut the dragon.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that Yahusha is going to do that. He's going to finally consume Nimrod and consume the Satan himself by the brightness of his coming.
Right.
In 2 Thessalonians, that the Master Yahusha himself, in the Restored Name King James, instead of saying the Master, it actually says Yahusha himself will destroy the anti-Messiah. And let me just read that real quick. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse, let's see where it goes to. It says, whom Yahusha himself, let's see what, there we go, verse 8. And let me just put this on share screen for people who are watching can see what I'm talking about. This is the eSword Bible app here, and it says, for the Restored Name King James, it reads, 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 8, and then shall that wicked be revealed, the wicked one, whom Yahusha shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming. Even him whose coming is after the working of Satan with all power and signs and lying wonders. And so this is obviously referencing to this chapter in Isaiah, that the arm of Yahuwah is the one that destroyed the dragon. So we definitely know who that's referring to.
Yep.
And it's very interesting that it says he dried up the waters to make a way for the ransomed to walk through. And I think this is saying that basically he was the one who split the Red Sea in a way. This is saying that the arm of Yahuwah split the Red Sea for Yashrael to walk through. Let me see what verse that is in. That is in, let me see, I believe it's verse 10 of chapter 51. Let me just make sure I'm correct about that. Let's see here. And yeah, it says, Isaiah 51 verse 10 of the Restored Name King James says, art thou not it which has dried the sea, the waters of the great deep, and that has made the depths of the sea a way for the ransomed to pass over. And so, obviously, we know that as the story of the Passover, and we know that as, Masha and the rest of the original Yashvalites being able to walk through the great deep waters because of the parting of the Sea of Reeds. So it's pretty interesting to me that it says that. That gives me a little bit more insight. Pretty interesting.
Yep.
So that's all I wanted to point out. Oh, wow, I almost missed this. Verse 16, and I've put my words in your mouth. With the shadow of my hand I have covered you to plant the heavens and lay the foundations of the earth. Wow, that's got to be talking about Yahusha.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I can't see him saying that to Isaiah. That would be a little weird.
Especially at the end, which was you my people.
Mm.
As it says, the shadow of his hand I have covered you to plant the heavens, lay the foundations of the earth, and to say to Sion, you are my people. And then verse 17 gets into that they drank the cup of Yahuwah. Now, obviously, I believe this is obviously talking about the cup of his wrath as a correlation to, that Babylon has the cup of Yahuwah.
When it's talking about planting the heavens in verse 16, we used to think back when we thought that there was a big universe full of stars and planets and all that, that once we were raised, we would go out and literally plant the heavens with the human race. But since we now know that the earth is a flat plane and that the sun and moon go around the earth and not vice versa, we don't go around the sun. How do we plant the heavens?
Says we do though.
No, I think this verse definitely has to be interpreted as Yahusha was the instrument that Yahuwah used, and as I always say, he is the lesser version of the Father. It is hard to wrap our heads around it, but he's a duplication of the Father, but a lesser version. And he's in I think it's in Corinthians somewhere where he talks about without him, nothing would have been made.
That's right.
Yeah.
So literally, if we connect what Paul says in his letters to what this is saying here, it's pretty clear what the interpretation is. Yahuwah is actually saying, my right hand, my outstretched arm, planted the heavens. And Yahuwah caused his son to create the heavens and the earth, which, you can see John 1:1 referencing to, that the word was Yahuwah. In the beginning. So you have, a plurality in Genesis. That's why I always say there's a plurality there for a reason. Because there's
maybe because the heavens today have been so polluted by the evil ones who have been spraying chemtrails constantly on us, he's got to clean it up. And that's what it talks about, replanting the heavens.
there can be new heavens, plural, new heavens. It actually says in Revelations 21, the new heavens and the new earth, and actually this time we'll have heaven coming down. So you won't have to worry about heaven getting polluted in the air, because it's literally going to come down, and we're going to be dwelling with Yahuwah in person on the new earth. So
that's not until after the millennial reign.
Yeah. Yeah, that's not until after the millennial. And
All the people who have ever lived come up and have their chance for salvation, then every human being who's ever lived will either be in the lake of fire or will be spirit, and that's when the Father will come down.
yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting though that Yahuwah again it refers to his cup of wrath that Yashrael drank from it, and it's kind of interesting because you can connect that to Jeremiah, where obviously Yahuwah is talking about Babylon with the cup of wrath that she had all the nations drink from her cup. That he basically his cup of wrath is the same cup that she gets the nations to drink from. And so it's kind of interesting that he uses that same terminology referring to Yashrael because they transgressed against him and they drunk in the cup of his wrath, but he's had mercy on them. And see, it says, both these are coming upon you. Who is sorry for you? Ruin and destruction, scarcity of food and sword. How shall I comfort you? Your sons have fainted. They lie at the head of all the streets like a gazelle in a net. They are filled with the wrath of Yahuwah, the rebuke of your Elohim. Therefore, please hear this, you afflicted and drunk, but not with wine. Thus said your master, Yahuwah, and your Elohim, who pleads the cause of his people. See, I shall take out of your hand the cup of reeling, the dregs of the cup of my wrath. Never again shall you drink it. And I shall put it into the hand of those who afflict you, who have said to your being, bow down and we pass over you, and you made your back like the ground and as the street to walk over. And so that, to me, that kind of sounds like Revelations 18:4, where Yahuwah, tells us to come out of her, that we don't receive her plagues and we don't receive payment for her transgression. So it's kind of like he's having mercy on us and he's taking the cup of wrath away from us.
I can only see this as after the Great Tribulation, and Israel is totally given over to Yahweh. They've repented, and at that time, the Father has mercy on them. And I hope my son is one of them.
As every mother should hope.
Yes.
So let's see here. So that was the end of chapter 51. So we've read so far 3 chapters. Let's see here. I know our recording's probably running pretty long at this point, so I think after 52 we'll end this study, just so it doesn't become like 2 or 3 hours. So, yeah. All right. So whoever wants to read this last chapter, let me know. If not, I'll read it. Going once, going twice, 3 times. Okay. Yashayahu Isaiah, chapter 52. Awake, awake, put on your strength, O Sion. Put on your garments of splendor, O Yerushalayim. The set-apart city, for no more do the uncircumcised and the unclean come into you. Interesting. Shake yourself from the dust, arise and sit down, O Yerushalayim. Lose yourself from the bonds of your neck. O loose yourselves from the bonds of your neck. O captive daughter of Sion. For thus said Yahuwah, you have been sold for nothing, and you are redeemed not with silver. Interesting. That's pretty interesting. For thus said the Master Yahuwah, at first my people went down into Egypt to sojourn there, and Assyria oppressed them without cause. And now what have I here, declares Yahuwah, that my people are taken away for nothing? Those who rule over them make them wail, declares Yahuwah, and my name is despised all day continually. Wow. Therefore, this is my favorite verse ever. Shall my name, therefore my people shall know my name in that day. For I am the one who is speaking, see, it is I. How pleasant upon the mountains are the feet of him who brings good news, who proclaims peace, who brings good news, who proclaims salvation, who says to Sion, your Elohim reigns. The voice of your watchmen, they shall lift up their voices. Together they shout for joy, because the eye to eye they see the return of Yahuwah to Sion. Break forth into joy, sing together, you waste places of Yerushalayim. For Yahuwah shall comfort his people, he shall redeem Yerushalayim. Yahuwah shall lay bare his set apart arm in the eyes of all the nations, and all the ends of the earth shall see the salvation of our Elohim. Turn aside, come out from there, touch not the unclean thing. Come out of her midst, be clean, you who bear the vessels of Yahuwah. For you shall not come out in haste, nor go in flight, for Yahuwah is going before you. That's an interesting verse to use around this time. For you shall not come out in haste, nor go in flight, for Yahuwah is going before you. And the Elohim of Yashra'al is your rear guard. See, my servant shall work wisely, he shall be exalted and lifted up and very high. As many were astonished at you, so the disfigurement beyond any man's, and his form beyond the sons of men. He shall likewise startle many nations, kings shut their mouths at him. For what had not been recounted to them, or revealed to them, they shall see, and what they had not heard, they shall understand. And that is the end of Yashayahu, Isaiah 52. And I really like verse 11. It really is a quote that Paul says in the Brit Hadashah. Separate yourselves, come out from among them, do not touch the unclean thing. And it's very interesting. This is another verse that I think is definitely more clear cross-reference in the Septuagint. For verse 11, it says, depart ye, depart, go out from there and touch not the unclean thing. Go ye out from the midst of her, separate yourselves, you that bear the vessels of Yahuwah.
He's talking to the true Jews who live in Jerusalem, because there are those who say they're Jews that do lie, who are in cahoots with the Catholics. And I see this very much as kind of a parallel to Isaiah 47, where it talks to the Catholic Church. Come sit down in the dust, O maiden daughter of Babel. And it's telling the true Jews, the Jewish nation, and the rest of the Israelites that live there. There's probably quite a few Luites and other descendants of Israel. So it tells them to shake yourself from the dust. Arise and sit down. Loose yourself from the bonds of your neck, O captive daughter of Zion. Because they are captive right now. They're captive by those who say they're Jews, who are preaching against the name and against the Messiah. And they're just captive. But once the two witnesses get here, they will start to turn away the captivity of our brother Yahuda.
Yeah, I kind of agree because the context, the chapter starts off by saying, no longer in my city, my set-apart city, will the uncircumcised dwell. And so you have the idea of the only two interpretations of that could be that he's talking about obviously you have physical circumcision and spiritual. So you have either way, he's talking about people that are still there that are not circumcised at all, which there's a quite bit of them in Jerusalem that are not circumcised at this point. The rabbis admit they really don't even do circumcision anymore physically. So even on a physical aspect of it, they're not circumcised. And on a spiritual aspect, I would say the majority of Jerusalem and Tel Aviv and all that area over there is definitely not circumcised spiritually. Not trying to condemn anyone, but I'm just saying from what I've seen from the fruits of that nation, it's a very, very small percentage believes in Yahushua at this point over there. And that I think that's who Yahuwah is actually calling out of there, is those that are, really seeking and possibly coming to know Yahushua at this point, the small remnant that's in that land, or possibly the Yahudim that are at least following the prophets and the Torah. And I think those are the groups that Yahuwah is probably telling to come up out of her midst, just like it parallels in Revelations 18:4 to us, come up out of her. And obviously her is referencing to Mystery Babylon, and Mystery Babylon is all over, not just one nation. Mystery Babylon's everywhere. It's that spirit of confusion. That's what Babel means. It means confusion. It means melting pot. It means everyone's beliefs mixed into one. Basically spiritual hybridization, spiritual abomination. It's all these mixed beliefs all rolled up into one. The one world religion is even Mystery Babylon. So anyone else has anything to add? I think we're about to end this recording and this study for right now. If Sally has anything to say, or Sadie wants to add anything, or if Shoshana has anything more she would like to add.
I'm here.
I've just been enjoying listening to you today, all of you. And I agree with everything that's been said. We long for the kingdom, and we long for this evil, wicked world to be a thing of the past. We long for Yahushua to return and establish his kingdom. We're just all looking forward to the future.
Yes, and those who say they're Jews but lie have done such a good job of taking away the name of Yahuwah and caused his people who live there to know nothing and be in confusion. Therefore, in verse 6, my people shall know my name in that day. Those two witnesses will be loudly proclaiming the name of Yahuwah. I look forward to that.
Yeah.
I actually believe that verse actually literally and physically is saying that he's going to proclaim his name. He's going to say what his name is, and he's going to verbatimly tell us that his name is Yahuwah. There's going to be no more dissension. I do agree with the two witnesses thing, but I also think that verse could actually be talking about him. It says, I am speaking. It is I. And if I take that literally, then he's going to be revealing his name to whoever is, hearing his voice, that he's literally going to be saying, I am Yahuwah, and he's going to be revealing his name back to his creation, that is his name. And there's going to be no more confusion. There's going to be no more, Masoretic vowel pointing, no more substituting J's for Y's, E's for A's. That there's going to be no more of that. There's going to be, all these, corruptions of his original name. No more will people be led astray. He's literally going to say his exact name.
Yeah.
And so that.
I believe that the two witnesses will be so full of his Ruach that they will be proclaiming his name.
Oh, yeah, they can't be rebuked.
Right. They cannot be rebuked, because anyone who tries to harm them, fire comes out of their mouths and kills them.
Remember what Sharon told us when she visited Jerusalem, Israel, years ago? That there were diviners and just wickedness everywhere. Where she went.
And Scripture agrees. Scripture says that spiritually, it's like Sodom and Mizraim.
Yeah. Revelation says that quite clear, that where our master was impaled, where Yahushua was impaled, is spiritually called Sodom and Egypt. Makes it very clear that that's what is spiritually, what Yahuwah considers Sodom and Egypt spiritually is the actual land that or part of the land he gave to the original Yashruites, which we know today as the land, the so-called state of Israel, and the capital there. Because Yahushua was actually impaled in Jerusalem, as far as I know, like outside the camp. So obviously Yahuwah is referring to that as spiritual Sodom in Egypt, and it's a hard thing to accept. The proof is there. You can go to the land today, the Capitol building. It's got the Eye of Nimrod right on it. So they're not even hiding it anymore. They parade their sin like Sodom and Gomorrah. Nothing new under the sun. Tel Aviv, the gay capital of the world. I mean, there's a reason it says that in Revelations. I mean, we're coming to the times of seeing why he called them, such a name and such a title as Sodom and Gomorrah. And so I believe that these times we're living in, we're not too far away from his return, because we're starting to see scriptures like that being fulfilled. We're finding out who the synagogue of Satan really is. The synagogue of probably Halel probably would have been a better translation, or the synagogue of Gadriel, as I found out recently.
No.
So technically it would be the synagogue of God, because that's the shortened version of, according to the book of Enoch, and what I found out recently from the Septuagint, even in Isaiah 65:11, that GAD is actually the name for Satan. It's actually a name that he's referenced to in the Septuagint. Even it says that you have forgotten my set apart mountain. You have prepared a table for the devil. The Septuagint actually puts the devil for where the Masoretic text has GAD. So that's proof of that. Gadriel, this chief of the Watchers, was probably Halel himself. And so yeah, I just found that out recently. But you guys can do your own research on that. There's info out there on that G-O-D, G-A-D, however you want to spell it, is, could possibly be the real name, or the shortened version of the real name of the adversary. So.
No. Satan's name is God.
What did you say?
She said Satan's name is God, G-O-D, because
right.
we get God from GAD in the Strong's Concordance, and you can, it's been, you know, so it's supposedly a shortened version of the chief of the Watchers in the Book of Enoch. Supposedly the one that was responsible in the Book of Enoch that deceived Eve was named Gadriel, Gadrel. So a shortened version of that would be Godpad. So, and we know that according to the canon, you know, the adversary, the Hashatan, was the one that deceived Eve. So it's I just found out recently that, you know, it's very possible and most likely that was his original name, that for some reason he doesn't want people to know his name. That's why he's putting titles like Lucifer and you know, Satan just means adversary. It's not even a name. Devil's not even a name. Devil means accuser of the brethren. Literally, that's what it says in the Strong's Concordance. It says accuser.
Right.
So his actual real name has been hidden. He wanted it hidden for some reason. Whether he doesn't want us knowing who he really is, but Enoch verbatimly tells us the chief that's over the Watchers, you know, one of the chiefs was the one, Gadriel was the one to deceive Eve. So, I mean, if you put two and two together with that and the Genesis account, I think it's pretty compelling who Gadriel is.
Yes.
So anyway, I just want to thank everyone for joining us for today's fellowship, and hopefully this message brought to you, and hopefully if you haven't accepted Yahusha as your personal savior, I would encourage you to do that today. No time is better than the present, and there's not much time left. So the biggest lie the devil ever said, or GAD ever said, was that, you know, you got tomorrow. That tomorrow's not promised. So please, I would hope that you would truly, wholeheartedly accept the message that we bring, that you accept Yahusha as your personal savior, be immersed, and please let his set-apart spirit give you wisdom and conviction to obey his commandments and the commandments of the Father Yahuwah. So with that said, thank you everyone for joining us. This is Brother Doug, my sister Shoshana, Brother Dennis, my sister Sally, and my sister Sadie. Have a great rest of your Sabbath.
Shalom.
Shalom. Thank you. You too.
Shalom.